Good evening and welcome to the South Burlington Development Review Board of January 21st, 2025. My name is Dawn Philibert and I'm the chair of the board, and I'd like to introduce our board members and staff members. Charlie Johnston, John Moscatelli, Jody Lesko, Frank Kochman, Quinn Mann, Dawn Philibert, and to my right are staff people, Marla Keene and Marty Gillies. Thank you for your fine work. This meeting is being recorded, and the first item on the agenda is the agenda is laid out in a different way this time. Apparently, it's a new IT had to reload it or something. So it's a little tough to follow. There's a couple of ways to participate in this meeting. One way is to be here in person as you are. And if you are, it's important that you sign in up in the back at the table, sign in to register your participation, provide your contact information. That's important should you ever want to take any action. We'll have a record of you participating. Similarly, you can participate virtually, and if you're doing that, it's important that you send your contact information in via the chat room so we have a record of your participation. And if you're attending by phone only, you can email your contact information to mkeene, MKEENE, at southburlingtonvt.gov. Thank you for that. Our first item on the agenda is the evacuation procedure. And in the event of an emergency, you would exit the back of the room in one of the corners and either turn right or left, and you would be outside in the very cold. So hopefully we will not have an emergency. Second item on the agenda is are there any additions, deletions, or changes in the order of agenda items? Hearing none, we'll move on to announcements. Are there any announcements? Okay.
I actually do want to mention, so we've had a little trouble with our document repository this past week. I don't know if some of you had trouble getting in. There's been a outside entity who seems to be downloading all of our documents ever. They're coming from inside the US, and it's an allowed thing to do. We can't stop them, but it is using up all of our bandwidth. So if there's something specific you are looking for, reach out to a staff member and we can assist you. Hopefully they will be done soon and things will go back to normal.
Okay, great. I didn't know we were that interesting.
I know, I said the same thing.
Okay. All right. Are there any comments or questions from the public that are not related to the agenda? Hearing none, we will move on to the one and only project we have to review tonight. And the agenda says that the agenda item should take until 8:05, and it's a big agenda item, so I think we will allow an hour and a half. We have found that much more than that on one project, we are brain dead, and I don't think you want us to be brain dead, so we will spend the whole hour and a half on this one project, and that is site plan application SP 2501 at 40 Kimball Avenue, site plan application SP 2501 of John Wilking to develop an existing 1.88 acre parcel with a 5,400 square foot one-story medical office building and an associated vehicle parking area, stormwater management system, and other site improvements at 40 Kimball Avenue. Who is here for the applicants, please?
John Wilking.
Hi, John. And for those of you who don't know this, John Wilking, in addition to providing great holiday lights for the city of South Burlington, has served on the South Burlington DRB for many years. So
Pre-COVID.
he knows the drill. And you are?
Carl Marchessault from O'Leary Burke.
Carl.
Yes.
Other members of your team?
Yeah, we've got Joe Green right behind me. He's the architect for us.
Okay.
And my partners, Tyler Atten and Nushi Brown, they're dentists with Green Mountain Dental.
Okay. Anybody online or anything else? No? Okay. Let's swear you all in. Raise your right.
Can you turn on your mic, please?
Can you hear me? Are your partners your tenants or your partners in the property?
They are intended to be my partners and then tenants of the partnership. So, yes.
But also members of the partnership.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. Okay. Why don't we get started by asking you, John, if you could give us a brief overview of what it is you're proposing? And you know the drill after that. What we will do is go through the highlighted staff questions and ask you for answers or clarification or whatever.
If I may, Dawn, before that, can I hand out to all of you some additional information?
You may.
Great, thank you. I got a pile.
John, is this the same information that you emailed to Marty earlier? Okay, so we already have it digitally.
The only exception being a couple of pictures along the street,
Okay.
which we could have done by Google, but copy this way. I don't have enough for
That's fine.
you, Marley. Make sure.
Thanks, John.
I'm just running the computer, so I don't really need to see it. But I will make a note that we need to make sure to scan the photos.
I know you were here for a sketch plan. I don't have a lot of memory about that, and I understand your project has changed considerably. So if you could,
Right.
pardon? Oh, okay, all right. If you could give us an overview,
Sure.
that would be really helpful, John.
Sure. So the site, first of all, Kimball Avenue was
Bring the mic in, please.
developed back in late 70s. I think it was 78 by the O'Brien brothers, which you've met before. And several buildings were built right around 1985, 86. That includes the old Merchants Bank on the corner, 20 Kimball, 30 Kimball, and a few, I think 108 Kimball was about the same time. I purchased 30 Kimball and 40 Kimball in two different entities, but in 2006, and have been sitting on this parcel because we bought it primarily because there was never enough parking at 30 Kimball, and that's why it was bought before us too. So it's just been a parking lot for quite a while. It's time that something else happened with it, so we're working on putting a dental office in. So.
Bring it in a little closer, John.
Even closer. Okay. All right. So what we've designed is a 5,400 square foot single-story dental office. We came to you for sketch review primarily because we were concerned about getting enough. Medical office requires a lot of parking, and we couldn't fit on the site properly without getting a little closer to the street. So instead of a 30-foot setback, we asked for a 15, and you thought you might be able to go that way. So we've moved on since then. The parcel itself is about 1.8 acres, but about 50% of it is unusable. The Potash Brook runs through the back. When you look at this, the site plan, you'll see that it goes well back over the river. The river on both sides of the river are on the parcel, and it's very wooded. Everything to the east of it, downhill in that picture, is wooded all the way over to 60 Kimball, which is the blind and visually impaired building. So my partners came to me about a year ago and said they were interested in doing something along this line. And we've made a lot of headway since the sketch review. We're about 50% of the way through construction drawings at this point. We're working on trying to get numbers together, and we're hoping we can get through most of the questions tonight, if not all of them. And we'd love to close it in one evening. That would be a miracle. So what we've got here is 37 parking spaces. We really wanted about 45, but we couldn't fit them on. And a 5,400 square foot single story building. And I think it's a successful plan for you. So we're ready to go through the staff notes if you are, unless you'd like something else
Okay,
in the overview.
thank you. Before we start diving into the comments, does anyone have any questions? No? Okay. Number one, we need building heights and elevations.
So first item on your package has building heights and elevations. The elevations have been done for a little while. The max height is about 24.5 feet tall at a peak. And you will see that the bottom of the first page on the left-hand side, you can see there's let me see if I can read it. Sorry. Top edge 24'4".
Okay, any questions? Okay, number two, this is about the front setback coverage. I'm going to read it. Staff recommends that the board require the applicant to provide a front setback coverage calculation measured with respect to a reduced 15-foot front building setback prior to closing the hearing.
So item 2 in your package has a calculation. And I'll let Carl speak to the math regarding it, but it has been calculated for you.
So we had a 30-foot, and you guys asked for a 15-foot because that's what we're asking for. So,
Carl, could you use your mic, please?
A little closer.
yeah. So basically, we're at 90 square feet, which is 2.5% fire reduction from the 27 at 30, because there's no building, obviously.
You're going to have to speak
We're
clearer
asking-
and bring it into you, please.
We're asking for, the 15-foot setback. So in other words, the reduction is there's no building. It's just that little piece of sidewalk as it's shown on the sketch.
I'm sorry, it's really hard to understand you. I'd like you to pull your mic in so you're talking into it. Pull the
Okay.
whole thing in.
Is that better?
Yeah, thanks.
So as shown on the sketch, it's just 90 square feet. It's just that little bit of sidewalk that's shown as coverage in the front yard, 15 feet. And then the overall, it works out to 2.5%.
Okay. Questions? Okay. Next.
So item number 3 and several of the other items that'll come up speak to the 100-foot buffer zone for the Potash Brook. The 100-foot buffer zone is not what the state calls for, and that's why we originally used the 50, and the 50 is acceptable to the A&R. We understand it's not acceptable to South Burlington. You will find on the third page, which is site plan number 1, there's a little 3 in the top right corner in case you lose track of which page you're on. You'll find an orange shapefile. It's running across the river, and that is the 100-foot shapefile from the city of South Burlington. Third page in, it's a fold-out page. It's called Site Plan 1 on the bottom right. It should have a little 3 in the top right corner.
So we're skipping down to bullet point 4, right?
Pardon me?
Bullet point 3 had to do with trees.
Oh, did I miss something?
I think 3 is just generally about
Oh, I'm sorry.
whether or not you
I'm
would
sorry.
grant the setback waiver.
Let me get. I'm out of order. Yes, there are several older pine trees in the front of this site. They were planted back in 1986 or thereabouts, and they are fairly large. They are many of the trees that we've found on the site are actually about ready to fall over. They are full age, but that's not to say that they don't have they're not attractive. They are attractive, but they do need to go. The 30-foot setback versus the 15-foot setback wouldn't have made any difference. If we dug up where the 30-foot would have been, we would have damaged every single tree but one. And the one that would have been still hanging around is up closer to the sidewalk and is a beautiful little oak tree that's going to completely block our solar, and it has to come out. So most of the trees coming across the front do need to come out. Also, the trees that are in the stormwater retention area off to the right of the plan need to come out. We actually were concerned enough in the stormwater area when we were walking it that something was going to fall over on us, that we've avoided touching anything over there at all. But there's a lot of trees, probably 100 plus trees left to the rear, and to our east there's a dense ravine and trees. So there's a lot of trees still left around. We are taking out, what's the number? 59 trees. So it's a lot of trees that are 6-inch caliper or bigger. 6-inch is measured at 4 feet off the ground. And so there are a lot of trees that come out. The one you see, the little X sort of dead center on the plan that's in front of you, is the oak tree, the 18-inch red oak. We're sorry to lose that, but if we're going to do solar, there's no point in trying to leave that. We will get no solar out of it. It'll completely block. So.
Okay.
I have a question about why the trees have to come out around the stormwater retention area. Because, so you can
Is this
work
mic
with
on?
the
Yeah.
stormwater retention. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah, Frank, we have to dig down and create a retention area, essentially a little swimming pool, right? And there are trees in that ravine that.
In the ravine, not around the ravine you're talking about.
Well, the stormwater retention area is on the edge of the ravine, and we have to take that section out. So if you look if you went back to the plan, well, there's the retention area, and the trees on the right-hand side of that plan are taken out for the retention area. We don't take anything back further than that. Basically, everything from the top of the bank, if you went out there's a edge before it drops off. With the exception of the stormwater retention area, everything from the top of the bank back, we're not touching. We're letting it go completely on its own, as it has for 30 years, 40 years. So there's a lot of trees saved. We haven't gone back and marked every tree back there, but there's literally 100 trees back there.
Sorry, I had just a question. That this tree, this 18-inch red oak, was going to be removed. Isn't this the property line? Isn't this in the city right-of-way?
Yes, we need to remove it if we're going to have solar. Marla, I guess that's a decision for the city. I'm okay with either way. We can save the red oak and not have any solar, or we can spend the money and build the solar, but then the red oak completely blocks the view. It blocks something like 75% of all the solar gain.
I don't think it's like an either or, quite like that, but I think we will need city
Okay.
arborists to review and approve. So this
Fair
plan
enough.
was not submitted with the initial plan submission, so the city arborist has not yet reviewed this plan.
Understood.
There might be like a right-of-way permit needed or something. I'm not sure exactly what the arborist and DPW will want from you,
I understand.
but it's not.
But there would not be a point in putting $95,000 worth of solar on the roof if we leave this red oak in place.
So there is I don't know anything about what the city DPW might say, right? I haven't talked to them. This is Marty's project entirely.
Right.
In the universe of possibilities is that they'll say, no freaking way. And which point John is going to say, then why the heck do I have to put solar on the roof? And then I think it's going to come back to the board. So you might want to just start to noodle on that a little bit.
Good to know. Okay.
Okay. We're committed to do this, but we'd really like to have, if we're putting almost $100,000 into solar, we'd like to actually have it work.
Yeah, and I'm not making a value judgment either way. I'm just, trying to play out the possibilities here.
Kind of a
Understood.
dilemma, but good.
Understood.
Good for us to label it up front.
Marla, is there anything in our ordinances that allows, if they want to take something down that's city property, that allows some sort of compensation to the city to plant elsewhere?
If I may, John, we're planting a lot of street trees back in. We're planting a lot of trees all over the place, but we would be adding all the street trees that are normally required for city planting as part of this project. So,
But assuming what you're planting are more ornamentals that aren't going to grow later and
No,
shade out
they're-
your solar?
they're not ornamentals, they're street trees. They're approved street trees, but
Okay,
they
they're
will
all
only
leaving
grow
for it.
about 40 feet. So the angle still allows us to catch the solar. We asked for cherries, which were closer to 30 feet. They didn't like cherries. That's okay. But we're aiming for a smaller tree so that the solar gain can still be useful.
To answer your question, John, the LDRs don't regulate what happens in the right of way. Once it's been accepted, right? What happens in the right of way is the jurisdiction of the city manager's office. So that's whether there can be some side agreement is completely outside of the LDR.
Okay. Number 4.
I found it. So going back to the site plan, this is related to the 100-year floodplain. And we've identified the 100-year floodplain with the orange shape file on the main site plan. It was also in your original plan in the stormwater management plan, which was site plan number 3 or something like that. In any case, we have identified it. We are not incurring on that plan, on that 100-foot area, except in one area. So if you look to the orange line coming across the back of the parking lot, we have asked to shape the slope, which is not significant at that point because the top of bank is actually behind this slope. All right. Am I being confusing?
No, something happened with the cursor. I was trying to follow along and it didn't work.
Oh, okay. So there's about a 10-foot wide by about 100-foot long area that we just want to shape. We want to shape it. We want to put in landscaping that will hold the bank. And this is not an unusual situation in the past for touching the 100-foot setback area. We're not touching the 50, but if you were to zoom out from where you just were, Marty or Marla, if you look to the left on 30 Kimball, there's a fairly large chunk of 6 or 7 parking spaces that are actually in this area. I'm not saying that that's how you have to do it, but we're not looking to incur on this other than to shape the area back there and make sure that it's properly landscaped so that it won't fail. So that we are improving that area from a standpoint of long-term landscape viability.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Are you showing the 100-year floodplain or are you showing the river corridor?
We're showing,
The shape file is the river corridor.
Okay. And then is the 100-year floodplain also on here?
The 100-year floodplain, I was talking to our surveyor about it, and we looked at the FEMA maps. And, we're considerably above what's called the flood hazard. So if you were going to ask for like a certification for elevation cert or something like that, that number would be kind of in the, I don't know why it's cutting in and out.
But like this, so it's closer to you. There you go.
Is that better?
Pull it forward. They're not that.
Based on my surveyor
Much
and
better.
and ours conversation, there is no flood issue at all. because this is a small stream and we're way above that flood hazard, which would be considered what we'd measure in a flood cert situation.
Yeah.
Clarify your testimony is that you're not filling in the 100-year floodplain within.
That's correct.
Yeah, we are not touching the 100-year floodplain. And it is about, what is it, about 20 feet of elevation?
I actually put it on the plan.
Yeah,
I think it's
I'm
on
just making sure because otherwise you need the no rise analysis.
Fair enough. We will not touch the 100-year floodplain. We're just in the corridor. And we'd like to be in the corridor. We don't have to be in the corridor. If you insist, we will build. You'll see there's a wall that wraps around the right-hand side of the parking lot. If necessary, we will build that wall across the back and never touch that corridor. However, it's much more expensive, and that would not improve the landscape viability of the back. So we think we're doing better by doing this. We think it'll look better. We think it's a better choice.
Did you review the river corridor regulations?
I have not.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking because there's some activities that are allowed, some that are prohibited, and then some that can be applied for specifically with the restricted infrastructure encroachment permit. So I don't know off the top of my head which one grading falls into, but I suspect that it may not be one of the permitted things to do in river corridor, in which case we'd have to either send you through the restricted infrastructure encroachment pathway or move out of the corridor entirely.
We're willing to work either way.
Sure.
Yeah, so our take is, if we can't touch it, we won't touch it, and we will put in a wall. We just think it's better choice to do what we're talking about.
So right now, the emphasis too is it's a gravel parking lot and all the runoff is sheeting towards Potash Brook. So we went out there, I went out there with members of our team and we looked at the bank, and the bank is in pretty good shape considering all the runoff that has received in a long time. We took a bunch of pictures for our file. There's really no erosion. As a result of this, we're going to stop that runoff entirely by putting in a curb. So really, there's going to be less runoff contributing because we're going to pick it up, feed it through catch basins, and bring it to a treatment facility. So really, effectively, there's going to be less runoff as a result of this project moving forward. So just to reiterate, so everybody's clear, all we're asking for is a little bit of grading to get back down to natural ground, and we're also honoring the top of bank. So I put top of bank. It's pretty obvious on that plan too, but I think it's on. I think it's on sheet 3 or sheet 5.
If you look at the little curve that's just above the upper parking lot there, the contour line above it, the flat line that sort of goes across the curve, is actually the top of the bank. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, that contour.
So
yep.
we're today. You don't start falling down that hill until well inside the 100-year corridor. It is what it is. It's. I mean, you're 20 plus feet above the river, the stream,
Actually,
when you're in that corridor.
a question I was going to ask. I asked because some years ago I was involved in a situation of a failed slope. It was a couple of years of litigation and a lot of money. What's both the elevation and the grade we're talking about of the existing condition?
Can you pull the elevation off? You can sort of see by the number of lines there, the contours,
I
that
can't
it's a
read the
long.
lines.
Oh, I'm sorry, Frank. I know this is not your thing.
We're effectively around 329, and when we meet back natural grade, it's like 323. So
I'm sorry. Say that again.
So there's
the
six-
finished grade is 329, more or less. Right at the back of that curb, and then it's 3-on-1 grade to natural ground at 323.
So it's about 6 feet of pitch in the area that we're just trying to grade.
To get back to natural ground.
Not down to the river. This is just that grading in the back. There's about 6 feet of pitch.
And the percentage grade or the degree of slope or whatever.
So
Well,
we went 3-on-1, which is pretty standard slope.
What is it?
3-on-1.
So about 33. Well, it's about like that.
That's it now, or that'll be the result?
That would be the result.
And what is it now?
I mean, the part of this, Frank, is actually raising the grade of the parking lot to be flat. So the parking lot today rolls backwards, and so it's at a lower grade than that going to the back, because it takes the whole distance to get there.
Okay, I understand.
The crux of the matter here, though, is what Marty said, which is that the board has limited authority to approve impacts to the river corridor.
If the board tells us they are unable to do that, we would move forward with a wall, and that would be that.
It's the river corridor and not the 100-year flood.
Charlie, pull the mic in.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, correct. There's a river corridor, and then separately there's a 100-year floodplain. I'm not aware that there's a 100-year floodplain on this property. Okay, but we're talking about the river corridor, and I think maybe some of the confusion is that the river corridor is approximately roughly 100 feet in each direction from the river.
Yeah.
So that's sort of like the number that's in common. But this whole conversation has been about the river corridor, not about the floodplain. And the other piece of this comment number 4 was just identifying what class the wetland is. You said it was delineated in 24, but I just didn't know if it was class 2, class 3.
Yeah, if it has a 50-foot buffer, it's considered class 2.
All right, it just didn't say it on the plans.
Sorry. Yeah.
Class 2.
We can, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it doesn't have a buffer, it's class 3. Otherwise, it's class 2. I mean, I haven't seen any class 1 myself, but we all.
Are you good, Charlie? Charlie?
Well, I mean, we need to give them direction, right? I'm trying to read the part about the river corridor right now.
Okay.
Just, again, because of my plan reading impairment syndrome,
It's a syndrome.
I want to be clear. There's no development planned for the river corridor except this reshaping. Is that correct?
Regrading, correct.
Regrading. Nothing else is going to happen in the river corridor.
There's no permanent structures, parking lots, buildings, none of that.
Well, it looks like there's this stone retaining wall.
Yeah.
Well, it's boulders, and the intent there is to appease Act 250, who will want boulders.
I think she means like right there, maybe. Like in that little corner, where the wall. Like right there. There's that half circle. It's kind of parallel to it. It's really close.
You're talking about the little half circle along the back. Those are boulders, and the intent is to make sure that nobody's wandering in there, and that you've identified an area. We wouldn't be changing grade. We'd be laying boulders on top of grade. So
It's to break 2 feet of grade, and this is kind of just, it is what it is. We got an email back from Tina Heath today. She's the state ecologist for wetlands, and she said she looked at our plan, and in order to not have impact, we stake out that line and put those boulders to break about 2 feet of grade, and she said that was acceptable.
Anticipating where we might wind up, is there any, I mean, it looks like that's between a wall and a reshaping, a slight reshaping of the grade. The least incursion upon nature, so to speak, is the reshaping, is it not? I mean, is there any benefit that the current grade is supplying that won't be provided by the 3-in-1 slope as opposed to whatever it is now? So any prohibition would be useless for any practical purpose, right?
Maybe.
So Frank, we're prepared either way. If the rule says you can't approve this, we are prepared to make sure that we put in a wall that is in to the buildable side of the orange line, so that we're outside that corridor, and would retain it with a wall. We'd prefer not to do that. We think it's a better choice. The landscape architects think it's a better choice to do what we're doing here. But if we can't, we can't.
You answered my question, thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm now up to speed. This is a South Burlington specific regulation.
it is.
And it does say in the ROC district, this is 12G, that all development, including new structures, structure additions, fill, dwelling units, and any other development is not or is prohibited.
I'm sorry,
I
Charlie.
feel like
Would you
this is
please say it louder, right?
overnight. Everyone's muttering. Could you please?
Right. Sorry, it's right there on the screen. You can read it yourself.
Would you say what you just said again?
Yeah, it's
please?
12G. It says prohibited in this district fill, right? So this is technically fill. You're right on the line. Could you not go to like a 2-on and use like erosion?
We are working with a landscape architect to do a bank stabilization, so we could definitely try that. The other thing too is, maybe this is not appropriate, but I feel like I should say this. It doesn't follow a contour or any rhyme or reason to atop a bank. So it's a shapefile. It's an exacting thing. That's where it is.
Yep.
Why it's there, I have no idea.
Right.
Why doesn't that orange line follow the top of bank? That's the fundamental flaw. But if we can't solve it, if that's what the regulations say, then that's what we're bound by. But we can try 2-on-1, or like John said, we're agreeable to a wall. We want to work with you guys. We want this project to go. So I think we're flexible.
This is a planning commission question because it's a South Burlington specific regulation. In
absolutely.
other towns, they would say the 100-year floodplain because it creates a rise situation in the flood.
Right.
Right. But
Yeah, and in other places, you'd be using primarily the 50-foot ANR small stream requirement as well.
yeah.
This is a South Burlington specific. I don't know why it's there.
I mean, it's buyer beware, right?
And I think Marty has actually already brought up to us how you can go about changing the shapefile, how to appeal the shapefile. Frankly, we want to be in the ground in about 3 months. We're not appealing the shapefile. We're not going to get caught up in the administration necessary to do that. So we would sooner have to build a wall than wait out the city.
I'm inferring from my well of ignorance that it's not possible to reshape without, quote, fill. Is that true?
Fill is fill. This line, Frank, is arbitrary. It was done all across a map in a very vague way. It's big bubbles. I mean, there is no rhyme or reason to it other than it does vaguely follow the center of the river. So it exists. We have to live with it. But it has nothing to do with the shape of the land itself. We would prefer it did. If it did, it would follow the top of the bank. And then we wouldn't have any issue at all. This is something that got put on a plan by, I assume, planning commission, and we have to live with it.
What I'm getting at is, I like words, plans, words good, plans hard, right? Is there any way to call what you want to do not fill?
Frank, if I'm reading that, it says prohibited development, all development, including, but all development, except for removing an old building.
Well,
But this is outside our jurisdiction, correct?
Now, see, you're getting into a zone where I'm comfortable.
Is this
All
the thing we need to
development-
get queued on for this project, though? I mean, there's 23 pages or so of
All right,
staff report
sorry,
here.
all
Is
right.
this the thing we're going to get queued on and
But
spend
it
half an
sounds
hour?
like this is something we don't have the authority to waive. So our answer is out of our jurisdiction.
I'm not so sure if it's not fill. But I agree with you. We'll save it for another time.
Frank, I think we better move along.
All right, let's move on to
Fill,
number
in
5.
other words.
Fun, but
So-
let's move on.
So we will plan on putting a little wall in there.
Given the above, staff recommends that the board discuss whether to grant the requested modification of the front setback requirement at this time. If granted, staff recommends that the board and an applicant discuss what conditions, if any, may be necessary and appropriate to mitigate the adverse impact of a modified front yard setback.
I had a question on this one. When I was reading through the comments above, the staff comments, Marty, it struck me that the paragraph that starts with finally, so the very last paragraph before comment number 5, is sort of like the thing that I wanted to decide first, because it seems like in an order of decision making, that's the thing that could solve for or address the things above. Is that right?
Sure. Yeah, I didn't know what a properly mapped river corridor might look like. If they were going to lose half their parking or something, this whole site might look super different, and they might want a different setback waiver than 15 feet. It appears that even with slight modifications, the layout will be largely the same, and so, yeah. But you were correct that was sort of a bigger one.
I was trying to track with you in this one.
Okay,
Yeah, generally on that one, board indicated at sketch that they were okay with the 15-foot front setback. This is the stage of review in which you need to make a definitive finding, yes or no. So this is just a prompt, that conversation, either now or in deliberations, I guess, but information.
so the question is, what thoughts might we have, including the applicant, about mitigating the adverse impacts of a modified front yard setback?
If you find there to be any.
If we find that it's needed. Okay. Do we think we need some mitigation?
To what end?
Yeah, I was just gonna, sorry, Frank, to what end? I think staff did a good job outlining as far as the front setback goes, that increasing it would not be necessary to ensure public health, safety, or welfare, and really it's an aesthetic, question. They've posed a pretty robust landscaping plan and set, but Charlie, so I'm not having heartburn over what we talked about at sketch, but let others chime in.
So one of the questions that occurred to me is I think about, and this was in the comments here, the additional residential population of that part of town over time, and whether or not there are conditions that we would consider for increasing the pedestrian accessibility. I think that was really the thing that stood out to me.
Comes up later
Yeah.
in the staff report. Okay, good. Okay, let's go ahead and move on.
Okay.
Number 6. This is about the building transition, how abrupt it is, and how to mitigate it if we believe it is abrupt.
So-
And it leads into the discussion of the pedestrian connection. So number 6, staff recommends the board determine whether the proposed contrast in scale could be characterized as abrupt, and if so, recommend the board require the applicant to minimize and mitigate the transition prior to closing the hearing. So we have a proposed 1-story building next to a 2 or 3-story building.
2. Well, it's 2.5. There's a story in the back.
Okay.
It's 2 feet, 2 from the front.
So what are your thoughts about the nature of the transition?
Well, if I may,
Yes.
fully half of the buildings on this side of the street and on Kimball Avenue are single-story buildings. You can walk up the street. The first building to our right, to the east, is 60. It's a single-story building. The building to the left is a 2-story building. The building beyond that, beyond 60, is a 3-story building. The building beyond that is a single-story building. Then a single-story building, then a 2, then a 2, then a 1, then a 1, then a 1.
You've practiced this, haven't you?
It's also
you-
my walking route, so yes.
If you go to the last page on the thing that I gave you, there's pictures of all the buildings on that side of the street. And you will see that it's not only not abrupt, when we get to talking about what materials should be on the building, there is almost every kind of material on that street. There is brick, there is stucco, there is metal, there is
Yes, there is.
there's block. There's almost every kind of building on that street. We are adding one more kind of building to it because we're using a fairly practical material on the exterior that's going to look like wood to a great extent. We want it to be a little warmer. We want it to be a little homey. We want it to be a dentist office. We want people comfortable coming there. It's intended.
Won't be anyways, so we might as well
So,
improve.
so
The perception that there is.
it's our intention to be a little different. And I think we've done a nice job on the plan. So,
Do you have a picture of what it would look like?
well, the very first set of plans, which have the elevations, you'll get a feel for it. We haven't decided on colors, and so we haven't gotten quite that far yet. All we know is that it's going to be a low maintenance material like a hardy board or a similar kind of thing, but it'll have a grain to it and it'll have a wood style to it.
Well, there's trees. Well, I have two things to say. One, I don't consider the difference between this looks like a little more than one story, isn't it? 1.5, would you call it, or something like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, one of the things we did is made that peak a little higher than planned originally because we wanted more solar. It's 24 feet high. If you went next door to my building at 30 Kimball, the 2 stories that are up there are only 20. We go about another 10 on the roof, so it's about 30 feet high.
All right, I see. That's my point. I don't consider that abrupt.
Yeah.
And also it's landscaped in between.
Yeah.
And as John has already done his presentation about the rest of the block, and beyond that,
Yeah, would you say it's a similar height as the buildings that are going to be going up across the street?
I don't know.
That's unknown.
Those are houses though.
No.
That-
No.
They're not approved yet. There's no final plat approval for the buildings directly across the street.
Okay.
But in the original, I think you were with us, Don, at the time, but in the original plans, there is intended to be a road that comes down and meets at 30 Kimball, the entrance to 30 Kimball, and it's intended to be a light there. We'll see whether that happens. But most of the Kimball Avenue, south side, I guess, is intended to be commercial or office in some way. That to be determined.
Okay, let's move on to number 7. Pardon me. Staff recommends the board review the plans to understand how the proposed project interplays with existing pedestrian connections and continue to the discussion of pedestrian access and orientation under 1406B4 below.
Right. So
what's the width of the sidewalk next door, where the 30-foot setback is? What's the actual width of the sidewalk?
pardon me?
The proposed?
No, the next door. Presumably,
It's 5 feet, right?
there's a 30-foot setback next door, right?
Yeah.
What's
Frank,
the
when-
actual
when-
sidewalk, the paved sidewalk?
The concrete sidewalk along the street is about 5 feet back from the street, but when the buildings were built next door, there was not the requirement to put the building at the street front. So it's a very different animal. We have parking in front of the buildings. We can't do that today. It's just a very different animal. If I could, in terms of this pedestrian orientation, if you could turn to the plan that says number 4 in the top corner. It's the 4th plan in, and it's the landscaping plan. Our intent, we can hit several things here and maybe knock them off quickly later. It's our intent to have a sidewalk that comes down as directly as possible down that roughly 5 feet of embankment to get to the building. In order to do that, we either have to have stairs, which we think is the best way to do it, or we have about 120 feet of sidewalk that has to go all the way from the very right-hand side down the slope all the way to the front. There is no ADA requirement, and there's no city requirement that there not be stairs in this sidewalk from the street. And we don't think that the best way for somebody who needs ADA access is to come in this way. The best way to come in is to drive in the 30 Kimball and come around, or come in at 30 Kimball if you want on a bike, on a wheelchair, and you're coming in at a flat grade all the way to the front. So we've proposed a sidewalk that comes right down, and we'll get to it in a little bit, but there is a civic space that we need to do as well. We have a small space in the back, 600 feet in the back, that doesn't comply with what the city wants. So we've actually taken next to that sidewalk a planting area and a flattened area, put a bench there, put a bike rack there. We're giving you something that is for pedestrian at the front of the building.
For a second, because because I think some background context, zooming out back to the whole site, because the question here was, what is the pedestrian orientation context? I wanted to remind the board, as John alluded to, this road, as part of the O'Brien development, is approved to move over here. And this project involves a rec path along Kimball Ave. So this side of the street will have a 10-foot wide rec path. Then this 5-foot wide sidewalk will remain. Will there? Crossing at the signal, John? I don't remember.
I would think so. I certainly assumed there would be, because it comes down the hill, and I assumed that there would be pedestrian coming
There
across.
probably will, but I can't imagine it be on both sides. Probably be just one.
No, I thought it was, in fact, I thought the rec path only came down one side of it and then
Right,
branched.
so there's a rec path on the
Yeah.
relocated Old Farm Road, and then it connects to a rec path on Kimball.
Yeah.
And there must be a crosswalk at the new signal at Kimball as
I
well.
think there is.
Okay.
If I recall.
Okay, so that's the zoomed out, just to put you back in context.
So could you show us where you're talking about the
Yes, so if you could zoom in to our sidewalk at the very front. Okay, you see the little squared off section next to the sidewalk? You've got a big green tree on the left of the sidewalk, and to the right of the sidewalk is a area that we intend to create a small seating area. I mean, call it a bus stop, call it whatever you want to call it, but it's intended to be a place to stop, some decent landscaping around it. Just intended to get us into a spot where the public can get to it. We frankly would keep the space that we were going to build in the back anyway, because we think that's a good choice for access from both 30 Kimball and 40 Kimball for lunches and whatnot. But Marty pointed out that it has to be more publicly accessible. I think that's the intent, and so this actually is big enough to comply with the entire standard, and we're still adding another 600 feet in the back that is not part of the standard, I guess, but that's our intent.
Can we back up? You said you don't have to meet ADA compliance?
Oh, we have to be ADA compliant from our driveway. We do not need to be ADA compliant from the sidewalk.
So you're saying ADA connectivity is through the driveway. Someone would have to go through the other property driveways and to get to your driveway and then access the building. They cannot access it from the sidewalk.
Yes, that's right. I mean,
It's
the city made a choice quite a long time ago to try not to have more curb cuts.
Yeah.
We'd be happy to have a curb cut. If we did, we'd have a little sidewalk along the side of the curb cut, and we'd be all set. We're not looking to change the world here. We're just doing it the way that the city likes it set up.
Given the site plan, it's hard to imagine under what circumstances thinking about the steps or ADA, what circumstances would anybody in normal use be accessing the building from the sidewalk? Hardly ever. Right?
Well, Frank, I mean, to be fair to the planners and the planning commission, this neighborhood is likely to change dramatically. There are 1,000 units or whatever it is that the O'Briens are building up there. We would love to have people walking across the street to the dentist office. We don't have a problem with that. But if they could walk down that hill and walk across the street, they probably can walk down 5 stairs. And if they can't, they can go right around and get there. So,
Got it.
Good. Pardon me. Okay, moving on to number 8, question number 8. This is around the architectural plan. Staff recommends that the board require the applicant to update the architectural plans to identify, pardon me, the proposed construction materials and demonstrate how the architectural features of the proposed building. I'm sorry, could you continue to read this, please?
Sorry, I'm just going to start over on number 8. Staff recommends that the board require the applicant to update the architectural plans to identify the proposed construction materials and demonstrate how the architectural features of the proposed building will respond to those features of existing buildings that define neighborhood character prior to hearing. We've heard a little bit from you.
And
I do think, this is requesting the actual proposed construction materials prior to. Is that something you anticipate?
well, we
Thank you.
beyond what we're at right now. No, we're still in the process of finding out what materials cost and what we can get in a timely basis. I don't know if you've run into this much, but there's a lot of lead item issues these days. For instance, we don't want to build this building out of steel because we just simply can't get steel. And some of the siding issues exist as well. So we're telling you is that we may use metal siding in some cases. It will look more like wood. It'll look like board and batten if it's metal. We may use hardy board, and we're not likely to use wood. We're likely to use something that's more durable. But I don't think you need to know a whole lot more than that. Maybe I'm wrong, but normally that's not something that I was used to getting into other than seeing this is approximately what it's going to look like.
So is this
Quickly too.
Hang on a sec.
is this what I've shown on the screen? This is your updated plans that you submitted today. So this is generally
Yeah, this is generally what it's supposed to look like. And you'll see the board and batten to the right-hand side of that and the clapboard to the left side of it. It's intended to look residential, but a big residential, 5,400 feet. It's a big house.
Okay,
which elevation faces this? Is it east or south? Things are not
It's labeled as the west elevation.
okay.
To face the street
Yeah, our
on the next page.
Next page.
it's
Thank you.
the facing the street has the solar panels noticeably on it.
West.
That has to happen.
okay. Okay, let's talk about number 9. Given the above, staff recommends the board discuss whether the above standard pertaining to pedestrian connectivity is met. If not, staff recommends the board require the applicant to improve pedestrian connectivity by rotating the location of the door, reconfiguring the sidewalk to include an accessible route, and providing direct, safe pedestrian connectivity to the proposed civic space.
Yes, we don't want to, we want let me back up. The city, I think, likes internal streets. They like the style that this is. It gets much of the traffic off and deals with it in the back. You have to be able to access that from the parking. The parking can't be in front of the building. So if you're going to the dentist, you don't want to have to climb around the building to go in the front door. And we don't want to have 2 front doors. We have two on the corner, but we don't want to have a front door on the street and a front door in the back. This is not CVS or Rite Aid. This is not retail. This is a dental office. So, and I don't know if you understand, but there is about a 5-foot differential between the sidewalk and the level of the building. So if we were to try to put the entrance on the sidewalk side, the building would have to come up and go even closer to the street. And we'd never be able to access it properly from the parking. It's just problematic. We think we're making ADA better. We're hitting it just about right by leaving it the way we've got it. So we would ask that this be acceptable.
Any questions or problems, board? Okay, hearing none, let's move on to 10. The applicant's proposed site amenity is not presently approvable. Staff recommends the board require the applicant to update the provided plans to comply with one of the identified site amenity types in Article 11.b prior to closing the hearing.
So this is just backing up to where we were a minute ago on the front plan there.
Yes.
Marty pointed out that it needs to be clearly intended to provide welcoming respite between or adjacent to the buildings. I think putting a bench in a nicely landscaped area, you'll need to get to the landscaping plan if you want to see it. It's number 4. It needs to be directly adjacent to a public right-of-way or sidewalk, and that's why we put it where we put it. And carefully landscaped. We used T.J. Boyle to landscape it, so and we comply with this is 350 square feet. I think we needed 326 or something like that, and we're keeping the 600 feet in the back.
Questions, comments? Okay. We have enough to move on. Okay, number 11. This is, we're going to ask you to revise the plans to show a river corridor.
Done.
Okay,
That's the orange line.
perfect. Thank you.
It's on several different plans now.
All right. Number 12. We will ask that you comply with the DPW before closing.
Okay.
Hey,
Let me just mention very quickly, we obviously will comply with the DPW for what they need. They bring up the 15-foot pedestrian easement, which you might want to look at. It crosses right across the river from one place to another. It was put there in the mid-'70s. It will never get used as far as we can tell, and you'd be very wet feet if you wanted to use it. So, but it's an easement. It exists, and it's on the plan.
Yeah, we learned about that with the O'Brien project because the O'Brien owns the adjoining property farther down Kimball Ave. You know, and I avoided use of cardinal directions there. And it's sort of one of those easements that we would refer to today as a floating easement, where it's an easement on the land for future location to be determined at such time as the property is developed. I don't think the city has really moved forward with developing plans for pedestrian access through this corridor. I think, Marty, you and I should probably flag this for the planning team, remind them that this exists and make sure that they don't want to, have some conversations with John prior to the board closing the hearing.
Well, we're fine with it being there. We're fine with it moving. We don't really care. It's in an area that we're not going to touch.
Yeah, right.
And so if there ended up being some kind of walking path back there, God bless.
okay. Number 13. This is asking you to comply, actually requiring you to comply with the water department.
Yeah. So agreed, except there are no sprinklers needed in this building. It's a single-story building. It has lots of ways out. We do not need sprinklers, and we do not need a fire department connection. And we would think that they'd use the hydrant that's 100 feet away at the entrance to 30 Kimball.
Okay.
So we will comply, but we don't need to comply to that.
Okay. And similarly, in number 14, comply with the comments of the fire marshal.
And so again, no sprinklers are required. There is no general anesthesia used, and no one will be incapable of self-preservation to be able to get in and out of the building.
Okay.
So we're prepared to put in a completely monitored fire alarm system as required, and further, there's a question here about where the ADA parking is. We think we actually put it in the best spot. You can actually put ADA parking that you have to cross traffic for. We didn't. We put it in the place where you'd come out of the door, plane down to the parking, and it's right there. So we're certainly willing to comply. with everything, but we think it's in the perfect spot.
Okay. Let's move on to number 15. Staff recommends the board require the applicant to revise the proposed bike rack pad to meet the dimensional standards of Appendix G and continue discussion of short-term bike parking standards under 13.03B2D6 below.
So there's about 5 or 6 different bike things coming up. So if you could go to Plan 4, which is the landscaping plan, you'll see. I think we can accomplish this. We've got a bike parking for two bike spaces up at the street in our new little public civic area. We have a bike spot. There it is. Victor Stanley Frisia bike rack, just next to the western entry to the building. So yeah, right there. So there's a bike. We put a bike. It's not a U. We wanted to get a little fancier one than a U. So there's a bike spot there. So we've got one at the door, one at the street, which is all that's required, and then we have bike shed. That's, if you look sort of down around the corner to the right, Marla.
Sorry.
Yeah, top right corner. Zoom in on the top right corner of the building. You'll see a little square there on the corner. And we have a plan for that, which is number 5. That shows you the accessory storage building for the bikes. Very fancy. So we sorry? Yeah, the shed is intended to match the building with materials.
Okay.
And just while we're on it, since it's bike related, if you go to number 6, plan number 6, we're required to have a specific size locker. Our lockers, we had a whole lot of lockers, and they were all 3612 by 12. They have to be 3612 by 18 for this one. So we have one locker that is compliant with the bike standard. You'll see it on the, yes, right where the cursor is. There you go. So I think we're going to jump
Sometimes
through.
I know what I'm doing. Not often, though.
I think we're going to jump through about 4 or 5 of these, I hope, fairly quickly, because I think we've taken care of all the bike things that Marty had brought up.
Okay, let's see how many bike questions we knocked off. 15, 16, 17, I think.
Mm-hmm.
18.
Yeah. And
19
and 20.
20. Okay, very, very good. Any questions about bike storage, parking, whatever, board? Okay. Let's move on to number 20. My goodness, we might get through these.
I'm hopeful. I said I was hopeful.
Number 20.
I think it only happened to me once or twice during my time here, but
Staff recommends the board require the applicant to demonstrate how this standard will be met prior to closing the hearing, and that's the closed locker. Did we already talk about that?
yeah, that was 20.
Okay, 21. The city arborist, we talked about this a little bit before. The arborist needs to review the tree removal plan because they haven't had a chance. He hasn't had a chance to. I assume you're fine with that.
Of course.
And on the plan, the diagonal hatch pattern needs to be identified on the legend.
So there were a couple different hatch patterns that he could have been speaking to. We think it's the one that's left of the new sidewalk. That hatch pattern that's sort of, that's it, Marla. And that hatch pattern was identified, but it's clearer now. It's called a tree preservation and root protection zone. We don't want to do any construction in that area. We've got a couple of trees that we don't want to damage, oaks that are over there. One off the property, one on the property, but significant trees. So that's just a protection zone.
Good. On to number, sure.
When I flipped through these plans, I did see this hatch pattern and I didn't see it on the plan.
So that's underneath a tree in an island that's right off the front entrance. See that tree? Oh, no. Go to the entrance. That's it, right where your cursor was.
This guy.
That one, yeah.
Oh.
So,
Right.
so that is intended to be a perennial ground cover underneath it, rather
Okay.
than grass.
Thanks.
Good. Okay.
We-
Number 20.
We were wondering which hatch pattern you were talking about, so that's good.
The next one is regarding the snow storage
Same.
conflicting with the landscaping.
Same.
Staff recommends the board require the applicant to reconcile the landscaping plan and the proposed snow storage areas prior to, pardon?
That's one that Marty will take a look at.
Okay, Marty can look at that.
And you'll see we've got it in the top. If you go again to the landscaping plan, it's on both sides of it, top right corner and the whole left-hand side. There's a lot of room underneath these trees to be able to deal with the snow storage.
Okay.
We don't think we've got an issue there.
Okay, questions? Number 24, staff recommends the board require the applicant to modify the plans and provide a parking lot island area calculation demonstrating compliance with the standard prior to closing the hearing.
And we have, I think it's, let me just find it. Yeah. Way back at the back of your package, there's a one that's called ANC 4, Ancillary 4, which does the calculation. We've added a couple of spaces that are islands. You'll see one along the rear piece and one closest to the building in the back right. And we have a parking area of 12,487 feet. We have a required internal planted area of 1,249 square feet, and we have islands of 1,263.
Okay, questions, board? Okay. We're almost done.
Zoom in.
Number 25 is regarding landscaping.
Yes.
Staff recommends the board require the applicant to provide an itemized budget breakdown demonstrating how the minimum required landscaping budget is being met prior to closing the hearing.
So if you go to number 7 and number 8, number 7 is a order of magnitude budget for the building, and it's actually coming in so far very accurately. The biggest number that we've had to deal with so far is plumbing and HVAC, and it came in within spitting distance of the numbers we have. We show that the building is going to be about $2,758,040. I don't think that number is going to be quite right, but we use the number $2,800,000 to base our landscaping budget on. And so if you go to number 7, that proves out the $2,000,008, and number 8 shows you where we're coming from on the landscaping plan.
I have a question about the rough order of magnitude budget. Earlier you said you hadn't decided on materials yet. Wouldn't that be a variable that affects this budget?
Sure, and we assumed a hardy board, which is one of the types of materials. We don't know whether we can get it at the moment, and we don't know whether we can get the steel that we want on the side. But we've carried numbers that we think are going to prove out. You never know until you get to 100% construction drawings what your final number is, Frank. So we think we're very close to the right kind of number at $2,000,008. And frankly, I don't know if you noticed, but our landscaping budget in that number is higher than what we're showing that we're going to spend. We're assuming that it's all of $40,000, That's Division 2, the fourth line down in the order of magnitude budget. So
Okay.
we're carrying more than what we're saying we're going to spend as a minimum.
Hear you.
Thank you.
Just to interject real quick, I think I maybe miscommunicated that one. But the thing that we were looking for is an itemized landscaping budget. So,
And okay, that's on the next page.
perfect.
It's on 8. Carry behind that. You'll see
Beautiful. Cool.
full landscaping budget there.
Very good. Thank you. All right, number 28. This is about the 2 oak trees. We've talked about this a little bit. One is on your property and one is not.
Well, 2 oak trees are actually on our property. One is on our property and one has to be taken down if we're going to get to do the solar. That's what. So there's some, admittedly, what Marty got the first time showed 2 on the property in a different place. One of them right where it currently is, and one I think slightly towards. In any case, we have 2 that are on the property.
Okay.
One of which is right up by the sidewalk, and it is the one that we would request come down in order to not block our solar. And you'll see in our budget we're only carrying one. I think it's a 18-inch caliper tree in the budget. So we originally carried 2 at 3,000. They hadn't been measured at the time. We measured it. We're carrying the amount that's allowed for the size of the tree that we have.
So are you asking us to apply?
We're asking you to, if you look just to the left of the sidewalk, that big circle tree, that's what we're saving, and that's the only thing we're applying.
Okay.
So John knows this well. I think the last time this was done well was when John was on the board. So I'm going to say it for the benefit of everyone else on the board that wasn't on the board when John was on the board. The board has the ability to allow landscaping trees that the applicant goes out of their way to preserve. All the stuff in the back, John has appropriately not asked for credit for because it's incidental. They're not going out of their way to preserve it. In this case, they've sort of designed their site around this tree, and so they are asking for landscaping credit. Classically, what the board has granted landscaping credit for.
And that strikes me as being appropriate. Does anyone disagree? Okay, good. Okay.
Great.
Thank you. And the last question is,
Not the last. We're on 27, I think. Oh, I'm sorry. Was there something else?
oh no, I'm sorry. I thought this was it.
No, I'm afraid there are 31.
Dream on.
I've counted a couple times.
Staff recommends the board direct the applicant to address the comments of the city stormwater section.
So you'll see number 9. I don't think you all want to get into this in any great depth. Maybe you do. But the city of South Burlington actually, if you're under a half an acre, you don't need to have a stormwater retention system. And Carl said to me this morning, this is a little bit like not having to have parking. You actually have to have it. You got to do it. You got to take care of the water somewhere. You got to deal with it somehow. So we've built a system. The system is an approvable system. We've actually, because of the additional islands, lowered our percentage from where we were when this was written. So we're at about 45 hundredths of an acre, I think, right? 0.45?
Correct.
So we're under by enough that we're conservative and won't hit half an acre no matter what. But we're building a system. Frankly, Act 250 will ask for it, A&R will ask for it. So we're building a system. We've complied with all the things that have been talked about here, like there was a spillway required. We're now showing all of these things. So it's up to you whether you want to go into each of these, but I would suggest that this get passed on to Public Works and Wheeler and get his approval, because I think we're good to go on all that.
Work for you, board?
Yeah, your emergency spillway is in the HydroCAD model.
The emergency spillway is made part of the plans. It's an 8-foot wide, so we added that. And then we're running 25 year. To be honest with you, I solely based that on like my business partner's perspective that I guess South Burlington asked for the 25 year, so we ran the numbers. So we ran the water quality, the 1 year, the 10 year, and the 25 year, and we provide the HydroCAD model so that it's easier to sort of manipulate and
Yeah,
use that model. So we provided that.
Yeah, I'm only asking because I'm guessing the emergency spillway came up because if it was to go over 324.5, right? Water going towards the building.
Actually, it doesn't even in the 25 year, but they said that was a requirement. So in the model, it doesn't.
Okay. So
It's going to use the control structure.
Okay.
It's got a 1 inch orifice, which is standard, and then it's got the weir, the 12 by 24 inch sort of rectangular that controls the flow. And then,
And
it's very clear in here that this is in the manual and it's a required element. So we added the emergency spillway just in case if we get something above a 25 year event, which at some point we will.
could happen, has happened. There's a lot of detail in this. You're welcome to dive into it or not.
I would say not, but I'm not the board. One member. What do you think? I'm looking at, pardon? Okay. Now, number 28, I did not understand this. Staff recommends the board direct the applicant to reduce the maximum illumination level at any one point property to no more.
Yeah.
Is there a word missing? Okay, good, thanks. That was
So-
a test, right?
So on
1 point on the property? Okay. To more than, so can you do that?
yeah, we did already.
Okay.
In fact, if you go to 10C, I blew up the photometric plan a little bit for you because it's hard to read this thing. I mean, I think under our current lights, I don't think you could. But the only place that there had been any higher numbers was right underneath the bollard lights on the sidewalks. They've been I forget what they call it, but they've redirected that light, and none of this happens now. So it's under control, and it was like if you took a flashlight and aimed it at the ground, you'd get a circle that was this big, that was 20 foot candles. Thank you. But it wouldn't spread beyond that. So it was not really significant to begin with, but the plan now doesn't have any of them. The highest I think it is around 5 foot candles right around the entrance to the front doors.
Okay, thank you. And number 29, after I read it, I thought, so what's the issue or the question?
Yeah, I think that's back-to-back errors. That one's supposed to be black. Yeah, not a red comment.
Oh, all right. Okay, good. So number 30, this is about screening the utility cabinet.
So I actually got you something for this. Number 11 shows you how much woods there is over by the by the utility cabinets. You're not going to see anything when you're coming down from east to west on Kimball Avenue. And if you were looking, you're welcome to look at the landscaping plan as well. If you're looking straight off the street down the right-hand side of the building, you're still not going to see anything. It's we could put bushes around it, but there's no point. It's completely hidden.
Okay. And the last question is number 31. Staff recommends the board direct the applicant to affirm whether it is their intention to fully meet the requirement, pardon me, or to seek reduction under 3.19.C2 above.
And our answer is that we are intending to meet the standard. We think we are doing so, but frankly, this is a new standard, so I'm not sure that we're doing so. We have contracted, well, we haven't contracted yet but we have retained Green Mountain Solar to take a look at this. They're coming up with an array output of 39,130 kilowatt hours per year based on the flooding that whole right-hand side and based on the oak tree going away. We will use roughly 45,000. So we are not net zero, but we're pretty close. And it's my impression that as long as we identify a solar-ready area that's, and I think Marty agreed that this was a reasonable sized solar-ready area, we're covering everything we can cover. To do more than that would mean having to put, I don't know, pole-mounted solar panels or something. But we think we've done a good job getting to that. So, Marty, am I reading the standard correctly that as long as we have made a reasonable attempt to cover the solar side, we're covered?
Yeah, I don't actually know like the specifics of this standard, but I just know that at this time, we were just asking you to. You don't need to prove that you've met it until you get the CO for the property.
Well, that's a little late.
Sure, but I think that at this time we were asking you to indicate whether you were trying to meet it with solar only, or there's a couple of exceptions or workarounds if solar's not going to work on the property.
Our intention is to meet it with solar.
Okay, perfect.
So I guess that covers that question.
Okay. So that brings us to the end of the staff report. Let me pause and ask if the board has any other questions.
I do. I'd like to go back to maybe the first one.
Go ahead, Frank.
The board has had a long discussion about this in another setting, but I think allowing the setback as a waiver, the setback waiver requires a finding of necessity. Thought you started off casually saying the reason that you need it is for parking. I suggest that you make a stronger and much more specific statement of necessity.
Frank, we are doing several things to make. We're obviously avoiding getting into the woods. We're avoiding getting into the rear of the property. We've done everything we can to fit this on the property. I want you to understand that building a building for a dental office is extraordinarily expensive, and this may not be a cause for approval, but it will generate a lot of money in tax money for this city. It's over $500 a square foot. Now, the building I own next door, I bought for $110 a square foot. This is dramatically more expensive, and we need dentists. We need to do what we're doing, but in order to do it, I understand,
it doesn't
Frank.
go to the question, right?
I understand, Frank, but in order to maintain a medical office use, which we think this is the best use for, you need at least 7 spaces per 1,000 square feet. I know you're saying that parking isn't a good enough reason, but parking, if you want to support having dental uses and medical uses in your community, you need to understand that you need to have that kind of parking. And we can't give up the parking at 30 Kimball in order to just generate it for the site, which was what staff suggested. We could do it with no parking, and that's just impossible.
All right, so take as a given. I have no reason to dispute it. Seven spots for every 1,000 square feet?
It really should be about 7.5, but we're at 7.
And remind me, what's the total square footage we have?
5,400.
5,400, right.
Yeah, it's 37 or 38 spaces.
37, yeah. With 39 spaces?
37 spaces.
7 spaces.
Yeah.
And what's the standard on which 7 per? I'm being rigorous here because
No.
I think we're being pushed in other areas.
And you are being pushed, and I apologize. I mean,
I don't mean pushed by you. I mean it's an important issue, over a broader area.
Yes. To give you a feel, next door is 3.5 spaces per 1,000 for office space. Probably should be 4 in order to make sure you've got enough parking. But 3.5, I actually counted vacant spaces at 9 o'clock 3 times last week and came up with 30, 32, and 37. So one day we had 37. I have 9,200 square feet vacant next door. Because of COVID, we lost a bunch of tenants and it's slow coming back. If you do 9,200 times 3.5 spaces, you will come out to 32 spaces. I need every space I've got at 30 Kimball. So we can't give up parking, and but that just gives you a feel for what office is requiring. This is a situation where there are 15 chairs, so 15 customers sitting in chairs theoretically, with 15 people working on their teeth, with people coming in to get in that chair next. So that's not all at once, but it's happening. There's administrators to this. It's not magic that the bills get paid and so forth. So there's as many as 10 potentially there, and then there's the dentists. So we're confident that they're going to actually, and we've made arrangements that at 30 Kimball, they can take 7 of our spaces, we can take 7 of theirs if rollover was necessary. But that's the most we could do, and that's
the most fine. That's the most you could do. Accept your answer, and spaces per square foot. Now the question is.
So let me add one more thing, Frank,
Okay.
because I think this is my guess is this will appeal to you. We could crunch the drive area and the parking spaces in a way that would be uncomfortable. People would hit each other when they came out, and probably save ourselves 10 feet. We don't want to do that. We want a good, long-term, viable site. And in order to fit the building in, have the drive be of a decent size that you're not going to hit your neighbor when you're backing out, we needed that 15 feet.
Why does the building, that's the parking per square foot. Now let's look at it the other way around. Why do you need that many square feet? In other words, is there something, why must you have 15 chairs, for example?
It's an economic reason. This is a dental office that has been growing and growing and growing, and this is what they need in order to make their analysis work. And if they can't get it here, they'll go somewhere else.
I would ask other members of the board if they have any further questions on the issue of necessity.
This is a similar thing that I was thinking about with number 5, where we sort of moved on quickly. And I think I'm the newest member here of the board, so I listen a lot when feel like I have an opinion, but I'm not sure if it's worth voicing. So I think one of the questions that I had related to this was thinking about the intent of the land use regulations and the city plan. And, for those of you that don't know, my professional areas of expertise are in energy and in behavior change related to energy, so how people use energy. So I'm very familiar with what types of incentives are needed to change people's behavior regarding car use, for example, single occupancy car use. So my question for staff and maybe the board is are we able to meet the intent of what the city plan is, knowing that I think with a medical use specified that there are particular expectations of the public for parking, but that we also as a city are trying to encourage walkability, bikeability, and public transport. So I think that's sort of what I was wondering, is if we skipped over this, but there should be some more discussion on whether or not we are being as creative as we could be related to that. And I know the staff comments were pretty significant in this area, so I didn't feel like we maybe gave it enough discussion. So anyway, that was where my mind was, and I'm glad you asked the questions because they were along the lines of the questions that I was thinking too, and I wanted to kick those tires a little bit more. So thank you for reading my mind.
Dawn, if I may, I mean, I've owned 30 Kimball Avenue for almost 20 years. We've had bike parking available the entire time. I've occupied it that entire time. I've walked into that office every day for years and years and years. In that time, I might have seen a handful of times that there were one bike. I'm not disagreeing. Wouldn't it be great if the bike racks were full? Wouldn't it be great if I had to put more in? But we live in Vermont in a cold place. And honestly, if you have a car and you're going to the dentist, are you likely to ride your bike? You might walk.
Less well.
And fair enough. Good. I mean, you know, I was down in Burlington the other day and I saw a father with two kids. It was 22 degrees outside and he was riding his kids to school. Terrific. That's great. It's not the norm. And we need to face reality for the moment that we need this kind of parking in order to be able to operate. More people will come over time to be pedestrian friendly and be bike friendly. And I think if that neighborhood next door to across the street from us comes along, we need to be ready for it. I'm not disagreeing with that. That's fine. But for the moment, we need to deal with what reality is, and that's that we need this many parking spaces in order to fit.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that need, particularly in the current conditions. What I am putting on the table is that I think the intent is to create the conditions for different behavior. And part of that is policy around land use and how we make it easier to do the things that the city has decided are important
Sure.
to its community. So again, this is for me not a deal breaker necessarily, but I think it's important that we have the discussion about how creative can we get, because frankly, you all are specialists in the areas of your expertise, and we rely on you to work with us to be creative. And it's our job to ask hard questions and really ask for that creativity from
Sure.
our partners in development, as it were.
And can I speak to Jody? Yeah. Okay. Normally you speak to the chair. I would argue that Marty came up with, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 bike questions, 3 or 4 questions about civic spaces. Probably half of all of our questions today are about this, and I think we've answered them pretty well.
Unless there's something, nothing leaps to my mind that's being, quote, nullified here. Nullified is a pretty strong word. What intent or purpose do you think might be getting nullified? What's even on the table?
Me?
Well, anybody.
Yeah.
You or anybody else, right?
I mean, my read of the land use regulations and of the city plan is that it's clear we want to create a walkable, bikeable, public transport centric community.
All right.
So that's what I'm thinking of.
Well, it's not bothering me in that respect personally. It doesn't. I mean, nullify is a pretty strong word.
Yes.
15 feet is a pretty good sidewalk, or a pretty good setback for walking. I think. What kind?
Well,
of, what kind of,
and I don't know if you understand, Frank, but it's. I mean, there's the setback that the city owns, and then there's the 15 feet. It's a long. It's probably 35 feet before you come to the building. It's a long way.
Okay, what are you going to have for sidewalk there?
Well, there's a sidewalk right down. There's a sidewalk that pre-exists, and it runs right along the street, and then we're having a sidewalk that comes in from there straight down to the building.
So so it's not doing anything to diminish the existing public sidewalk, right?
No.
So
We're improving the sidewalk.
So it's nothing's being nullified here.
Well, and frankly, we'll probably have to tear out a pretty good chunk of it, because running across the front of that building is power, communication, Two, we actually found the other day a line, another fiber optic line that we didn't even know existed, and nobody could mark. Phantom line, about 3 feet off the sidewalk. So we're going to have to do some dancing along the front in order to even make that whole thing work. And frankly, the trees are in the way.
I just wanted a necessity question, well exercised, that's all.
Excellent.
It is 8:45. Are there any other comments before we turn to the public for public questions? No.
Was there anything? Sorry, I wasn't tracking all the things that need to be done before closing because
Go ahead, Charlie.
Public, but I'm just making sure we have everything before we
Yeah,
close.
sure.
I think, I think the big, is the oak tree. We're still gonna get comments from the city arborist and then review that against the solar. That was the one big thing I was tracking. I think that we would wanna keep it open in case there's a comment from the city arborist, which is concerned to bring that tree down, and then that was my understanding.
And Quinn, if we could close and get that comment, I'm fine with it. If we have to build the solar and keep the tree, we'll build the solar and keep the tree.
Understood. So I think the goal of keeping it open is if comments from the city arborist, we can't, if there's an intent or, comments from the city arborist are to prefer, or is direction to keep the tree. And then we have to revisit the solar piece of it or not, or see what we can or can't do.
Before you
within
spend too much time on this, there's a lot of stuff that needs to
And
be
other stuff,
triple
sorry.
checked because it only came in today.
Right.
Right. So all the stuff that has to go through the departments again. There were some conversations that need to be had with the fire department, with the water department. Not saying that I foresee any issues, but this is all trust and verify at this point.
So here's the suggestion. We're going to take public comment if there is any, and then why don't we conclude the hearing, schedule it for 2 weeks from tonight?
I'm afraid I'm in Italy that day, so
See?
yeah, I'm going
Oh,
skiing.
well,
So it'd have to be 4 weeks out.
Real hardship.
and
Yes,
maybe
I'm
that's
sorry.
just going to be a very brief touch-base meeting, hopefully,
Yeah.
and you'll be on your way. Does that make sense?
I'm going to push Marty real hard to have a draft decision for the next meeting.
It doesn't work that way.
Marla, there's a question for you. I should know the answer. I don't. Do we have to be in public session in order to close a hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Quick answer.
Okay, let's, what part of Italy?
The Dolomites, the Alps. We're flying into Munich and driving through Innsbruck down to the Dolomites
Nice.
and skiing for 4 days and then
Nice.
falling apart and coming back.
Okay. Let's see if there's any public comment. I don't think there's any here. Is there any online? No? Okay. All right. So, have a great trip.
Thank
and
you.
thank you for,
You do need to announce when you're continuing it to.
we do. Yes, and we'll need to entertain a motion, and the meeting would be
I think it's the 19th. Does that
February.
make sense?
I thought we decided it was going to be a Tuesday.
That was today.
That was today. Okay.
It'd be Wednesday, February 19th,
19.
if it's not the 4th.
Okay.
We continue that date.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, John. Any discussion? Pardon me. All those in favor of continuing SP 250140 to February 19th, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. We will see you back on the 19th. Have a great trip.
Thanks, Don. And we probably will be moving forward with Act 250 alongside this, just so you understand, we're looking to move right along. Thank you.
And we have minutes too.
It's beautiful, but I think you have more.
Some recycling.
It's only 9 degrees outside.
Thanks, John.
Gloves on, everyone.
Thanks. Okay, the minutes of the, hold on.
I move to approve the minutes from December 3rd and 17th.
No. Sorry. There's a funny spelling error that should be corrected.
Okay.
There's a attendee, I think it was on the meeting on the 17th, who in the attendance list is listed as Aloisi, and throughout the document it's listed as either Aioli or some other version of Aioli. So I just wanted to call out that that person's name should be consistent throughout.
Okay.
Thanks, Jody.
Yeah.
I move to improve the minutes of December 3rd and 17th as amended.
All right. And
Second.
second. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay. Good. So,
Other business.
other business?
Next meeting's on Tuesday, and then the meeting after that, as we just said, is on a Wednesday.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We will see you in 2 weeks.
Right.
Boy, that was painless. I thought it was going to be a painful meeting. Thank you for helping me out as I coughed and.
No, I think I
through some of those, and I was like,
I struggle with the like pedestrian focus. Like
Yes.
the entrance should be at the front.
Yes, that
and
one's the same.
I know is that the same?
And if we can't talk about it now, you just let us
Oh yeah. Anyways, I was just wondering because I was rereading the like criteria you had cited for like trying to prompt them to bring the entrance to the front. Is that the same one that, or is it different elsewhere in the regulations?
There's an urban design overlay district.
Okay.
That's like along Shelburne Road and some parts of Williston.
Okay.
That's supposed to be a la like